Okay guys, today I want to show you how to change the oil, and this is a 1998 Lexus ES300 like a lot of my other videos. So I know a lot of you know how to do this, but this is just something I think every man, woman, and teenage child should literally know how to do. So you'll see I've got it on some ramps. I also have put some jack stands underneath it just because I've heard stories of these ramps collapsing. I've got the back wheels chocked on it, and I have the emergency brake down. So really you just need to do something to be able to get underneath your car. In my case, it's put it up on these ramps. So then you'll need to have some sort of catch container for your oil. You can pick these up at every auto parts store, even Walmart, pretty much anywhere has them. And make sure you get one large enough to hold the capacity of oil that you're removing. Most cars hold about five quarts. So you're going to push this underneath your vehicle, push it underneath the oil pan, and you're going to see the oil pan right here. It's easy to identify underneath. So it is right there, and you'll see the drain pan bolt right here. In this case, it's a number 14 to remove it. So just get your pan positioned underneath it. Make sure you catch all the oil. You certainly don't want to be spilling any of this on the ground or even your driveway. So I've loosened the bolt. Like I said, it's a number 14. Make sure the car is cool while you're doing this as well, otherwise you could burn your hand because the oil would be quite hot. So at least let your car cool down enough, or wear gloves or something. So just remove the drain pan bolt, and then let all the oil drain out. I usually like to just kind of go do something else and maybe work on the oil filter or something if you can, and then come back later. Now, using either like these shop towels I have, these shop paper towels I have that are very low lint, or a lint-free cloth, I always like to wipe the oil pan down where the oil is coming out, and then I'll do the same thing with the drain pan bolt. Most of these have magnets on the end to kind of catch any metal. So I usually just take these and wash them in the sink with a little bit of soap, get them as clean as you can get them. So once you got your bolt clean and you've cleaned the oil pan and kind of cleaned the threads a little bit, we're going to replace the drain pan bolt. And then when it comes to torquing it, you can torque it correctly using a torque wrench. You'll have to look up your particular specs. It's usually around 25 to 30 foot-pounds. However, one of the tips I've always been told is if you want to use a ratchet, choke up on the ratchet instead of holding it down here. Hold it really close here, and that'll prevent you from being able to over torque it. I've been doing it that way for many years, never had a problem with it. I'm not going to tell you that's scientific, but it works pretty well. So next we need to change the oil filter. So in this case, the oil filter is right here underneath the front exhaust manifold. I always like to check them and see if they're hand tight first. A lot of oil filters you can remove with your hand. If you cannot, then you'll need to use a filter wrench. But make sure you position the pan, because when you remove the oil filter, there's a good chance, depending on the angle of your oil filter, that some will leak out. So I just have this little cheap oil filter wrench. There are about 5 different types of oil filter wrenches, and I think most of them would work in this case. In the case of this one, it was a little too tight for me to remove with my hand, so I can actually go in from the side here. And remember, I'm doing this one-handed, so there is a definite struggle holding the camera and doing this, but you really shouldn't have any trouble with 2 hands. All you need to do is get it around the oil filter and just loosen enough that you can finish it the rest of the way with your hand. So as soon as you get the brake loose, then come in here with your hand and finish it off. Just remember that as you pull this off, there's a good chance you're going to get some oil leakage. That's why you've got the pan underneath there. So once we remove the oil filter, try to, as soon as it breaks loose, try to tilt it up so that the oil doesn't pour out. And now once we get the oil filter out of here, this oil drain pan I have down here actually has a little specific spot you can put your oil filter. It kind of keeps it propped up so that the oil can drain out of it, but it really doesn't matter. You could just kind of put it over the hole. Next, we're going to do the same thing here that we did for the bolt. We're going to take a lint-free paper towel or cloth, and you're going to want to clean the threads as well as the little metal ring there where the oil filter seats. You just want to make sure you clean that, get all the dust and dirt and the old oil off. really it just helps ensure that you don't have that your new oil filter, once you get it put on there, does not leak. And here's another tip that a lot of the pros use. So dip your finger in your new oil and just rub a light coat on the new O-ring on your oil filter. It really is just a good way to make sure you get a tight seal there. The last thing you want when you put this filter on is for it to leak oil. That would be very bad and possibly leave you stranded. So then just put your oil filter back in. It follows the same standards as everything else here in the US with the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So hand tighten it as best you can. And the general rule that I think most mechanics use is hand tighten it and then use your oil filter wrench to tighten it maybe a quarter of a turn more. So here's the oil cap. I'm going to remove the oil cap. You'll see that it even specifies the type of oil you should be using, which is 5W30 in this case. So now that we got that removed, the capacity of this vehicle is 5 quarts. That's very common. So I always like to start by putting in 1 quart less than the capacity. So I'm putting in a gallon, which is 4 quarts. So I'm going to put in a gallon, and then we're going to measure it. And I like to do that because you've got, when you drain the oil out of your car, you don't get all of it out. There's a pretty substantial amount of old oil that gets left in there. So that's one of the kind of one of the tips, is just start with a quart less. And then once I've got these 4 quarts in there, I'm going to start the car and just let it run for a minute. And that's just to let the oil circulate through the engine, refill the oil filter and all that. And I'm going to use this time to also back off the ramps, because we're going to need the car on level ground to actually check the oil level. So now that we've got that done, let's check the oil level after putting 4 quarts in, letting the engine run for a couple minutes. So to check your oil level, hopefully you already know this, but you want to remove the dipstick and you want to wipe it clean with a paper towel or something. And then you're going to stick it back in. Make sure you stick it as far as it goes and then remove it a second time. And then on this case, you'll see the 2 holes or dots on the dipstick. The oil needs to be between those 2. And you can see it's a little bit lower than the first dot. So we definitely need some more oil. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add maybe another half a quart. And I like to buy oil by the gallon. You get a better deal on it. Maybe it's not as easy to gauge a quart or so because I'm pouring out of a gallon jug, but I do tend to buy oil that way. So now, once you pour it in there, give the car a few minutes for the oil to settle. And now you can see that it's right in the middle between the 2 dots. So we're safe at this point. That's where you want your oil level to be, at least after you initially change it. Then once you've ran the engine for a while, you want to get underneath and look and see if you see any oil leakage. And the only leak I saw was some oil that spilled when we were changing it. So you just want to make sure that you're not seeing any oil leakage afterwards. Then after you've run the car for a while, it's actually driven it a little while, recheck the oil level again. You want to make sure this oil level stays safe. It's quite possibly one of the most important things that you can maintain in your car. So put the dipstick back in. Once you're good to go, replace your oil filler cap, and then you're good to go. I hope this helps. I'm not going to recommend a specific type of oil or filter. I always like the AMSOIL just because I don't have to change it as often, but I'm not going to tell you one's better than another. I'm just lazy, and I like not having to change my oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. All right, I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions or need any help. Thanks, guys. See you soon.